All right. Well, we've got one left, and that takes us to my main man, Josh. Dead Kennedys.
Yep. Dead Kennedys, fresh fruit for rotting vegetables. In the opening montage, you heard Holiday in Cambodia, probably the most famous song off of this album. And now you're going to hear California Uber Alles.
California, Uber Alles, California, Uber Alles, Uber Alles, California, Uber Alles,
All right, so speaking of dark bands, dark lyrical content, let's run the numbers on Dead Kennedys.
So Dead Kennedys, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables comes in at number 45 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 5 in 1980, number 346 of all time. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, but it is the Dead Kennedys' highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, and I believe it's the only one we're covering. So
Yep.
Make it a good one, Josh.
I will. I'm covering the whole band, this bio, so because we're only covering them once. The Dead Kennedys were formed in San Francisco in June of 1978 after band member East Bay Ray advertised in the Recycler newspaper looking for bandmates. So sort of like the Flyer phenomenon, looking for band members. This time they put the a Craigslist ad in basically a Craigslist type of paper, and found the members. So all of the band members have kind of pseudonyms for their name, or I guess stage names, really. East Bay Ray, known Raymond Pepperell, he's on lead guitar. Jello Biafra, Eric Reed Boucher on vocals. Klaus Fluoride, aka Jeffrey Lyle, on bass. Ted, aka Bruce Schlesinger, on drums, and 6025 Carlos Cardona on rhythm guitar. So I will just refer to them as their stage names from here on out. Their first live show was July 19th, 1978, where they were the opening act, and they continued to play shows and sometimes performed under pseudonyms like the DKs, the Sharks, and the Creamsicles, due to the provocative nature of their shows and lyrics. So they were already building this kind of reputation for what they were singing about. In March of 1979, 6025 left the band in what is assumed to be creative differences, and in July of 1979, they released their first single, California Uber Alles, on Biafra's and East Bay Ray's indie label, Alternative Tentacles. That will come up later. Alternative Tentacles kind of remains throughout the history of the band. In March of 1980, at the Bay Area Music Awards, they were invited to give, quote, new wave credibility, per the organizers, to the show, and they were set to perform California Uber Alles, and then about 15 seconds into the song, in a Elvis Costello-like turn of events, Biafra stopped the band and said, "Hold it, we've got to prove that we're adults now. We're not a punk rock band, we're a new wave band." And they had white shirts with black S's on them, and then they proceeded to pull black ties around from the back of their necks to perform dollar signs on their shirts, and played the song Pull My Strings, which is a satirical song about the music industry. And it was never recorded for an album, but it was later included on a compilation album, Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death. So I thought that was hilarious and kind of epitomizes kind of what the band is about in my mind, and their kind of take no guff, and not, to put it lightly.
Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death is an incredible album title, by the way.
It is. It just says everything about modern society too, in my opinion. In May of 1980, they released the single Holiday in Cambodia, and in June, they released Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Or recorded Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables, I would say. The photo on the front of this album shows police cars on fire from the White Night Riots of May 21st, 1979, which resulted from the light sentence given to former San Francisco City Supervisor Dan White for the murder of George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk. There's a documentary and movies about that if you're interested. And when Biafra ran for mayor, one of his policies had been to put a statue up of Dan White and for eggs, tomatoes, and stones to be available nearby for pelting it at all times. So I thought that was hilarious. And UK critics made comparisons to this band to the Sex Pistols. And in the album was released in September 2nd, 1980. And then so this is their first official release album, everything I have is after that and kind of gets into some more interesting things. So let's talk about the album first, and then I'll wrap up with all of the other good stuff. So Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. Matt, I believe you're starting. How did you like the Dead Kennedys?
So I first want to get clarification here. Is this considered a hardcore album?
Yes, they are considered this kind of start of the hardcore sound.
Okay.
And I would consider it a hardcore album.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Because hardcore is one of those terms that I always known and kind of knew when I heard it. Like, I don't exactly know how I describe it. Maybe it's just punk that's just faster and maybe, I don't want to say heavier, but maybe more aggressive perhaps. Is that a good way to describe hardcore?
That's a good question. Let me look.
Length of songs is definitely one. Highly political is another.
Yeah.
Okay.
Affiliated with left-wing and often straight-edge ideas is another element of hardcore. Spoken word lyrics, kind of, is another piece of hardcore.
John, are you eating right now?
A little bit, yeah.
I would say anti-capitalism, anti-commercialism would also be something that is class.
Funny song titles?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
not really funny song titles in most bands. That's a Dead Kennedys thing.
That's a Dead Kennedys thing. Okay. All right. Good distinction there. So I asked because that's a genre like that. I have a couple of good friends that are really into hardcore, and Superfan Kevin might even say that I think Minor Threat's his favorite band, so that might be his favorite genre. And so it's always been something that I'm like, that's been a little too much for me. I just never got into it. So, this album was interesting because it's definitely got that hardcore nature of it. I feel like the faster songs, there's parts of this album where the songs go really, really fast, right? And within that, it's not just the fast guitar playing and the drumming, but it's also the wordplay, right? So the singer he's singing a lot of words. I don't even know if he's singing really. He's saying or shout, whatever, right? But a lot of words are happening in a very short period of time, and it's a lot to fit in a very, very small window. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, as a general rule, can be a little off-putting and just a lot less appealing. And I think that where there is melody in here, there's definitely melodic parts. The fact that it goes so fast minimizes the effect of what the melody would do otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so that's another knock against this type of general genre, and I think that's what I kind of realized listening to this album several times. Are some of the reasons why hardcore and like that really fast-paced nature of a lot of the songs in here aren't as appealing to me, right? Aren't really as much of my thing. Having said that, I still like this album, and I think that even though those things are happening, there's other elements. This is another band. This reminded me a little bit of The Damned because that was a band that threw a lot. There was a lot of different types of songs. There were different things happening in the song, and that makes this for more of an interesting listen, because if you just did like the straight up kind of same thing over and over again, which maybe some hardcore is like that, it would definitely be less appealing. But because of the fact that there was a number of things in these songs that were happening that were kind of changing things up or going in a little bit of a different direction, throwing a curveball at it, it kept my interest peaked a little bit higher than I think that it ordinarily would. So I thought that was kind of like a big takeaway for me on this, is like were those kind of those things. I think "Let's Kill the Landlord's" by far my favorite song on this record. That one's probably the more traditional type song. That's kind of like a garage rock sounding song that could have been out of the 50s or the 60s. That I could just picture that being in a dance hall somewhere.
Let's lynch the landlord.
What I say, kill it. Let's lynch the landlord. Oh, even better. Yes, sorry, thank you. That makes it even better. Let's lynch the landlord. That just makes me laugh, right? But it's got a great bouncy bass line to go along with it that's a little bit dancey. And then there's a cool guitar tone. That guitar solo that they throw in there has a really great guitar tone to it. It's very kind of a crisp, out of place guitar tone. But I think it juxtaposes well with the rest of the song. So there's a ton of energy in this record, and it's hard not to get into at least parts of this. And I also recognized Holiday in Cambodia. That was the one song I did recognize because of Rock Band. I believe that was something that we played on there, so I always thought of that. But that's an interesting song on there. That stands out a little bit, apart from the other songs as well. It's a little bit more unique, maybe a little bit more creative, perhaps sonically. So overall, I'm a thumbs up on this for an album that's not a genre that's not certainly not in my wheelhouse. I didn't feel like this was terribly off-putting. I felt that there was enough to hang on to with some of the melodies, more of the punk nature of it. Again, some of the parts that were a little bit faster. Like When You Get Drafted, it was one that kind of came up. Drug Me, I think the verses in that were really, really fast. That just was a little bit off-putting. So there were some moments in there like that, but again, they would kind of come back and throw something else in there that would get me back in. So so not bad. I think I'm a thumbs up on this.
Definitely one of the fastest, if not the fastest band that we've listened to so far.
Yeah.
The speed is progressing on albums.
I think there's nothing funnier than the concept of Matt reviewing a Dead Kennedys album, because in many ways what the Dead Kennedys are is the opposite of why Matt listens to music. I mean, hardcore kind of as a genre is almost designed for people that aren't Matt. You know what I mean? It's it's all about the lyric and the image to some degree, and that's what the Dead and that's why it's we can talk
moshing.
About no, I mean, even the fact that you're is you're the type of person they'll look at and just roll their eyes, right? Because it's the level, it isn't about these things, right? It's about you either kind of get it or you don't get it, right? You either get the anarchic, and I get it, I get it, and as a result, you either kind of get what it is or it's just not for you, and they're just not going to come and find you, right? They're just going to say it's not for you, and that's cool. But also the fact that you don't get it is kind of we can kind of put you in this other box, right?
I'm not cool, John. I would get ostracized from this community.
No, but let me kind of explain though, because you're here's the thing. It's a very aggressive, in-your-face way of looking at the world. And it's not for everybody. You know what I mean? And I'm not even going to necessarily celebrate it because there's a nihilistic streak to hardcore, which is a piece of it. I have elements of that cynic streak, and that's where the Dead Kennedys and sort of, Black Flag and bands like that speak to me, right? And I think this album is almost impossible to evaluate. Yeah, it's got Damned is a good thing for some of the songs, Matt. It definitely is. There are elements of traditional punk and stuff like that. But let's be very honest. This album is almost kind of what spoken word is to poetry. It's a performance piece. It's an idea piece, right, that you are engaging with. And then it is designed to get you to go to a show, and at the show to embrace a lifestyle, right, that you will be a part of. It is not let me look at this, let me evaluate from 1 to 5 how I feel about this Dead Kennedy. No, it's the newest performance piece, right? So in that way, there's some similarities to some of the stuff we listened to at the end of the 70s, like This Heat, right? Or the pop group, or things like that, right? Where it's almost a Suicide, right? Is another, where they're not making the same type of music, but it's as much about the idea of how they're drawing you in, and music is art, right? And confrontational art. And let me start by some things here. I like the energy and the speed because it plays perfectly with this thing. I love Jello Biafra's voice because it's got that sort of like kind of like paranoid sounding, like uncomfortable, like warble almost a little bit that gives it an urgency to it. And the lyrics on this album are absolutely hilarious. I mean, it is an incredible lyrical album. I mean,
Yes.
California Uber Allies is one of the fucking funniest. It's about Jerry Brown, and it becomes, I mean, it became instant, like as I was listening, I was like, well, this is a Jerry Brown song because they're talking about like, Moonbeam Governor and stuff like that, and eventually we're all going to be, in a, like basically hippies. Like we're all going to be in a new hippies, but like hippies that are yuppies. So like not even like real hippies. Like maybe we'll engage with the peace and love, but these aren't even like real peace and love people. These are more like we're going to do like choreographed yoga in the morning, right? You know what I mean? Before we have our strong brewed coffee. So like there's just this like dripping indignation towards it. There's things like When You Get Drafted is a traditional political song, like a shock song like Holiday in Cambodia is designed to be as much as possible. They do an Elvis cover, which is hilarious because it's fucking Elvis,
Right.
And it's like, I Kill Children is
A serial killer.
like it's about a serial killer, but somehow manages to make you laugh, a little bit because it's basically telling you, you're worried about your children, but like there's a whole society that's designed to kill your children. There's pharmaceutical stuff. Les Lynch the Landlord is about just living in San Francisco and housing prices. Kill the Poor.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, these are all like very common left-wing songs, but they're also very funny. And they get to choruses that like hit you over the head, but they hit you. The repetition is another part of hardcore, right? But like the repetition is part of it, and like it's impossible for me to evaluate the Dead Kennedys as like a musical act. They're more sort of like how do you feel about the Dead Kennedys as an idea? And I like the Dead Kennedys as an idea, so the Dead Kennedys have always both amused me and informed me to some degree. So yeah, this is an easy thumbs up, but like we're not evaluating this like like Judas Priest, like let's look at the guitar riffs in the bridges, really speaks to me, you know what I mean? Or like, different stuff that Joy Division, you know what I mean? The ambiance here is creating a stark landscape with synths layered. That's not what this is designed to do. And so as a result, I mean, it's like, do you vibe with this or not? And like this is up my alley. So yeah, thumbs up.
Yep, I love this album. I love the cynical, pessimistic worldview that it presents. I love how blunt and aggressive it is. It's like punk, but with a clear point of view. And I love that it's clearly like satire and fast, and it just really kind of speaks to me on some level. It's a level like a way I get, and I love dark movies and dark comedies especially, and satire. So I think all of that kind of makes me really respond to the Dead Kennedys and what they're trying to go for. It's a way that, granted I don't live this way, but it's like a way that I would aspire to. It just really kind of is my worldview in a way, and even though I don't live it like the Dead Kennedys did or do, I just appreciate it. I appreciate that someone is out there speaking the truth in the way that I think.
They're not, though, as dour as like Fugazi or Minor Threat, right?
Yeah.
They have that view like you're saying, but they're also smiling and winking at you while you're doing
Right.
it in a way that almost says like, well, but maybe the world will get better, but let's all be honest, it probably is not going to get better. But and whereas like the others are sort of joyless. A lot of hardcore bands stereotype is they're joyless, and it's a well-earned rep.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they're brutal at times.
Yep. And I like you guys said, I kind of I can't even remember necessarily the musical side of this band listening to it, but I just really appreciate all the lyrics that they brought and the ideas. And I feel like that's kind of what they want to bring anyway. I think the music in some ways is secondary in difference to a lot of bands that we talk about. It's just, if you don't get it, you kind of don't get it. I don't see how you cannot listen to this and not see it as satire or on some level not, it's not like they're actually going to go out and well, nothing they write about's from their point of view anyway, but they're not like endorsing killing children or killing the poor. They are just commenting, comparing property being more valuable than people. And I feel like the other thing I really love about the Dead Kennedys is like all of these ideas are still as relevant today as they were, like 42 years ago. I can't believe I'm that old now, but it seems prescient and it seems timely, and I think there's always a place for that in music and in society, and that's kind of what I really like about it most of all. In my rankings, it's like my second highest rated album. Is it like as musically awesome as David Bowie's album from this year? No, but it's still, there's a place for it, and I feel like I responded to it on some level in the same way I responded to that album. So that's why I just really like it. And they continue that trend throughout the remainder of their album titles and their album covers and their songs. Are there any other thoughts about this album before I continue on with the bio?
I would just say, yeah, it's interesting that we're doing this in Joy Division because both of them represent, I don't know, ideas or ways of living, if you will, that are kind of anti-me, right?
Yeah.
It's not really like, I'm not like the super depressive, type of person. I'm not like this aggressive, angry, overly, I'm cynical. I'm not overly cynical, like maybe some of this stuff. But like the Joy Division sound resonates more with me than this sound. And again, I'm going back to all the music. And that might be a good way of putting it, John. If they're starting off going, this is not about like trying to get you into maybe the music as much as other acts will be, it's more about the energy and the message and all that stuff, then that totally makes sense.
But there's
not going to resonate with me,
Yeah, there's a glee in the amateurism of hardcore. That's part of what it is. The idea is you don't want to get too good. Because if you get too good, you're going to sign a major label record deal. And if you sign a major label record... I mean, that even happened to the Dead Kennedys. I think one of the band members wanted to do it, and the rest of them said, are you fucking kidding me? Like, no, you can't.
Yes.
But the Dead Kennedys, for Christ's sake. So, yeah.
Perfect transition to my next point. But what were you going to say, Matt?
As you guys were talking, I kind of realized that neither one of these groups represent me as a person, but one of them sonically and musically definitely does. And the other thing I will say about this, I found it interesting, the production. I don't know why this was done, or if it was done intentionally, if it was just because it's like more of a DIY thing. But if you listen to this on headphones, and maybe it came across on the just regular speakers as well, but it's definitely like one song would be come in much louder than another one, and it was kind of like the production quality was definitely not consistent across the board. So that's probably like more of the DIY nature of it. But I was like, what is up with that? Like, wouldn't they? I don't know if they didn't have the equipment or if that was intentional, but that was something that I picked up on as well that I wish was a little bit more consistent because. I had the volume turned way up to listen to one song, and then the next song would come and be like, damn, that was loud.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Did you notice that, John? Am I wrong?
I didn't notice it a ton, I'll be honest with you. And I listened to
I noticed it more in the beginning. With the first couple of songs, definitely, it stood out like that.
I'd also like to strongly encourage people to go to YouTube and watch the commercials and the pieces done on Joe LaBiafra when he ran for mayor for San Francisco, because he does these man on the street things where he goes around and canvasses, but he's canvassing basically everybody who's not going to be able to vote for him, like the homeless, but he's not trolling. You know what I mean? There's it's more the principle of like, I'm spending all of my time canvassing with all people who can't vote for me anyway, but really like he's just canvassing, people that are homeless and different stuff, and asking them like general questions like, what do you want me to do, and stuff like that. And he's just interacting with folks, and he's also on these TV shows, and they're asking him what his platform is, and he's got this like impish smile on his face where he's just saying he's saying a mix of like ridiculous stuff mixed with stuff that actually is really good policies, but some people would say is ridiculous because they think it's too, and like it's being done on purpose. Like he'll say like, I want to erect this statue and have people throw stuff at it. And also what I want to do is make it so like your employer has to pay for your health care. And it's a mix of these, and he's clearly doing it on purpose, right?
Yeah.
To kind of like, draw like the whole thing is like performance art. It's kind of like hilarious, which I enjoy when people take constructs and deconstruct them. And that's what the Dead Kennedys' whole idea is. They live to sort of and the whole idea of that has been deconstructed into like trolling culture now, which just is a sucky, lazy, petty, mean way of doing it. And there's such an art to doing satire and edge without just being mean or pedantic, and like that's what I like about these guys is they're not pedantic or like needlessly mean, right? You know what I mean? But if you're a prick, like they'll make sure that they jab it in sharp, and that's a lot of what this is. And that's kind of Matt, where it's like I once again you go back to like I felt like Joy Division's, but that's because Joy Division is making a traditional music album about playing music, right?
Yeah.
This is not that. Yeah.
Yep. So after this album, they kind of had an interesting history, and some things happened that I feel like are worth noting. Like John said, in '81, there was talk of being signed to Polydor Records, which was a major label, but then Biafra said he would leave the band if the rest of the band decided they wanted to sign. However, Polydor did not sign the band after learning their next single was called "Too Drunk to Fuck." In December of '81, they released the EP "In God We Trust Inc., which has a cover of a gold Christ on a cross of dollar bills and features the songs "Moral Majority" and "Nazi Punks Fuck Off," which I feel like just sums up the band so succinctly to have a song label like that with the cover and the title. In November of '82, they released their second album, Plastic Surgery Disasters, which the cover features a withered, starving African child's hand being held and dwarfed by a white man's hand. That was actually an award-winning photo, apparently. And by this point, they had started to gain an underground following and continued to play live shows in '83 and '84, and then focused on their Alternative Tentacles record label as well. Their next album was called Frankenchrist and was released in October of '85. This album caused controversy because their original album had posters inserted into it of H.R. Giger's painting Work 219 Landscape XX, aka Penis Landscape.
Okay.
You can look this up. It is it's definitely H.R. Giger, and it's a repeating pattern of penises being inserted into vagina, and it's like all of H.R. Giger's work, it melds kind of the mechanical with the biological. And H.R. Giger's most famous for creating Alien design from the movie Alien, and kind of the whole set of an aesthetic of that. But it is definitely a provocative painting. This caused the newly formed Parents Music Resource Center to get involved after a teenage girl in L.A. Bought the album, and the girl's mother wrote a letter to the California Attorney General and LA prosecutors complaining about it. And then in 1986, members of the band, along with people involved in distributing the album, were charged with distribution of material harmful to minors. So they were taken to court as a result of this. The focus of the charges was mainly on the H.R. Giger poster, and then 3 of the defendants were dismissed for lack of evidence. And in August of '87, the case went to a jury with Biafra and Michael Bonanno, who was the former Alternative Tentacles label manager. And it resulted in a 7-5 hung jury split in favor of acquittal. And the DAs made a motion for retrial, but it was denied by the judge. And by this point, though, the album was already banned in many stores around the country.
That is quite the picture. John, you should post that on our Twitter feed.
Yeah. I don't feel the need to go search it out, I'll be honest.
Looks like they switched. Josh, is there a story behind the album cover that they switched it to?
I can't remember what they switched.
Because it's like 4 old guys in really tiny cars, like in a parade.
Shriners.
The Shriners guys.
The Shriners, yeah. You didn't know that's the Shriners, Matt? That's what makes it even funnier.
Yeah, I can't remember what they said about why they switched it, obviously, to not be as provocative, but or to get around the censors, probably to kind of couch the content of the album. I kind of went on a side tangent reading about the Parents Music Resource Council, obviously famously headed by Tipper Gore, wife of Al Gore. But there was also this Filthy 15 list of songs that they had deemed, kind of obscene. Do you guys know any of the songs off of that would be on that? I thought
there was a Wasp song on there.
Yes.
Darling Nikki.
Yes.
Wasn't there a
You're
Frank
right,
Frank
accounts.
Zappa? Was Frank Zappa on there? Or did he just challenge it? I know he
spoke
did
he spoke in front of Congress about it. You're right, Matt. Wasp. The song title was "Animal Fuck Like a Beast,"
Right?
And the Prince song "Darling Nikki" was on there because of sex and masturbation lyrical content.
I'm sure there had to be a Prince song on there at some point.
Yep, "Darling Nikki."
That's what you just said.
Yep.
Oh, okay, Darling Nikki. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Judas Priest's "Eat Me Alive" is on there. Motley Crue's "Bastard." Sheena Easton "Sugar Walls."
Well, yeah, that's about a vagina, so that makes sense.
Let Me Put My Love Into You, which we talked about. Twisted
This should always be a list of things I want to listen to right here.
Def Leppard's "High and Dry" on Saturday Night. Black Sabbath's "Trashed," and Cyndi Lauper's "She Bop." And there's a couple of others I did mention.
She Bop's about masturbation, I think, right?
Yes.
Isn't that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you could clearly see a theme there between the sex and masturbation and violence as one of the things that they were against.
All the joys in life.
Yes. So just a little bit more. The band actually decided to break up in January of 1986 after being disillusioned with the hardcore music scene and due to the lawsuit as well. They played their last concert on February 21st of 1986. And actually, during the summer of '86, they recorded their final album, Bedtime for Democracy, released in November of that year. And then their final split was in December of '86. Biafra has had a falling out with the band in the years since. There has been a reforming of the band with a new lineup and touring also, but not with Biafra. He never reconciled with the band up to this point. In the late 90s, there was a royalty lawsuit between members of the band and against Biafra, claiming that he conspired to pay them lower royalty rates. Although they agreed that it was actually an accounting error, they still were upset that he didn't tell them about it. And then a jury found Biafra and the Alternative Tentacles label guilty of malice, fraud, and oppression, and he had to pay outstanding royalties, damages, and the rights of the most of the back catalog went to a Decay Music label. And then as recently as 2019, the Dead Kennedys released DK40, a live compilation of the band celebrating 40 years. So they are still kicking around. Biafra lives in Boulder, Colorado, I think right now, or currently, or has been. And the band always kept up. They never sold out, as they would say in the 90s, and they have kept living their truth. So
also, Jello Biafra does like commentaries at different times.
like
on
spoken
YouTube,
word. He's releasing spoken word albums and things. I saw.
He would
as well.
come to Trenton regularly when I was growing up and do spoken word and sort of like presentations and stuff like that at different places. Yeah, I saw him once or twice. He's an entertaining speaker.
Yeah, he seems like a character, to put it mildly.
Yes,
passionate. I'm guessing he's passionate as well. So,
yes.
Yep, that's the Dead Kennedys. That's all I got to say about that.